Elle est où, Anna? We are now going to start this event. If I could kindly ask who has joined us in the room to start having a seat. Merci, thank you. I see that there are still people coming in. Please join us, grab a seat. And I think some of the meetings are still ending and people will continue joining us. But because the CICG Center closes early, we will now officially launch this event. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, bonsoir. Soyez toutes et tous les bienvenus au Centre international de conférences de Genève. Excellencies, dear public, we are really delighted to welcome you all here today. Welcome to this special event, to the 6th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the Minamata Convention on Mercury, which will formally kick off tomorrow. Tonight's event is organized by the Secretariat of the Minamata Convention on Mercury and the Geneva Environment Network. I am myself the coordinator of this network. We are delighted to welcome you to this conference center, where delegates successfully completed the negotiation of a new global treaty on Mercury, the Minamata Convention on Mercury, 12 years ago, in January 2013. The convention was then adopted a few months later at the diplomatic conference hosted by Japan. Since the entry into force of this convention, the Secretariat has made efforts to host public events around Geneva to make the general public also informed on the need for this instrument and what it is trying to achieve. And at the last COP 2 years ago, we decided to open to the public the venue where delegates are negotiating, with the aim to amplify the human stories behind mercury pollution and to bring hope and meaningful dialogue to the forefront of the negotiations agenda. The special event you are attending this evening, From Science to Action, Protecting the Amazon from Mercury Pollution, is featuring globally recognized voices in nature conservation, policy activism and science that I will be very honored to introduce as I give them the floor. This evening, besides those who will be negotiating in the coming days to make Mercury history, we have in this room diplomats and stakeholders from Multilateral Geneva, as well as citizens who are not familiar with the busy discussions and negotiations happening within these walls. As we are tonight in a United Nations venue, in a meeting convened by United Nations-led bodies, let me remind all that the organizations of the United Nations system are committed to enabling events in which everyone can participate in an inclusive, respectful, and safe environment. And as I mentioned at the last COP, while we are here to celebrate, others might be struggling for their lives in other parts of this planet, as the victims of Minamata did with Mercury last century. Conscious of the challenges some of your countries might be facing, we stand with you and our United Nations colleagues around the world, working to contribute to a world in peace, standing for human rights and respecting obligations arising from treaties and other sources of international law. And now, to formally welcome you tonight, it is my pleasure to give the floor to the Minamata Convention Executive Secretary, Ms. Monika Stankiewicz. Ms. Stankiewicz, please join us.
Thank you so much, and thank you for such a warm welcome. And also, I will start by thanking Diana and the Geneva Environment Network for convening us at this special event on the eve of COP-6. I'm really deeply grateful to all the remarkable speakers today who have joined us, and each of you really inspired me, and I'm sure you will also inspire our audience to do everything we can to make Mercury history. And I will start with Fernando Trujillo. I would say your passion and optimism really give me a hope that we can protect human health and also preserve biodiversity. Eileen Miyoko-Smith, we met in Minamata, and my meeting with you really impacted me in many ways. I feel that you embody respect and human dignity, and it comes from this profound understanding that environmental crisis such as that happened in Minamata is not only about environment, but it has many more effects and lasting effects. And Andre Margales, thank you to you and through you to the government of Brazil for championing the rights of indigenous peoples on the global level, and also for your Brazil's leadership on the full and meaningful engagement of indigenous peoples in the work of the Minamata Convention. And also to George Bodansky, thank you for creating this powerful documentary. I think no one can really stay indifferent to the tragedy caused by illegal mining, gold mining in Amazon after watching the film. And lastly, Jairo Saumunduruku, the indigenous leader, who we look forward to hearing your message and grounded in the lived experience of the Munduruku people who has suffered through the crisis caused by the illegal gold mining in Amazon. And I had a privilege of meeting Alessandra Korab, who is featured in the film, and I approached her after watching it because I was really moved. And you know what she said? She said, good, now we can do something about it. And since then, really, these words are staying with me, and I hope also that what you will hear today from inspiring speakers and from watching documentary will also stay with you. So with that, I would like to simply wish you an inspiring and purposeful evening, and which I think will also set the scene for the negotiations that will start next Monday to achieve the next milestones under the Minamata Convention. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Stankiewicz. It's now my pleasure to invite Mr. Fernando Trujillo to join me on the podium. Mr. Trujillo is a conservation scientist and National Geographic Rolex Explorer of the Year. He will share insights from decades of research and his advocacy against mercury pollution. Mr. Trujillo.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for the Minamata Convention for this invitation. And today I will take you for a journey in the Amazon to the river dolphins. The mercury is an invisible threat, but it's everywhere. And I have the pleasure to work in the Amazon for the last 40 years, and I have seen the deterioration of the Amazon during all this time. It's not only one threat, it's a combination of threats. And we produced this map with National Geographic, trying to put together the illegal gold mining, the dams, the agriculture, and you know we already have lost millions of square kilometers of the Amazon, almost 9 times the size of Switzerland. So all these threats have been exacerbated for all the economic activities in the Amazon. I'm from Colombia, and unfortunately, we are the country that with the highest mercury contamination per capita in the whole planet. And mercury is a threat not only to humans, also for animals and environmental health. The story of the mercury in the Amazon comes from the last 4 centuries of gold extraction. We estimate almost 200,000 1,000 tons of mercury already dumped in the rivers of the Amazon. And we have trying to look how to test the mercury in the region, and sometimes testing in humans is not so simple. There are so many concerns about that, so we started to look for other alternatives and looking in aquatic vertebrates. This is a sensitive topic that some governments and some politicians don't want to talk. All what to do, for example, to say to the people, you are not allowed to eat fish in a region like the Amazon, putting in action the governments. How to solve this problem? Solutions are not simple. They are quite complex. But I will give you some context. Because our planet is now facing a very serious conflicts. We have already 61 war fronts in the planet. Never, like from the Second World War, we have in this situation. So the markets are very volatile, and the price of the gold just is increasing. And this increasing of the price of the gold put more pressure in a region like the Amazon. And we have a lot of evidence from indigenous people with a lot of mercury pollution and also in dolphins. So we select dolphins because they are top predators in the Amazon. They are facing a lot of threats, and they are as endangered species in the whole distribution in the Amazon and the Orinoco. And we have a situation 10, 12 years ago. There was a collapse in the fisheries in the Amazon, especially the big catfish, and traders started to hunt a scavenger fish, the piracatinga. And in order to capture the piracatinga, they used to kill a lot of dolphins. 1,000 dolphins per year in some small areas in central Brazil, in a transboundary market. So we tried to see how to stop this, how to stop the killing of dolphins. So that fish is a scavenger. So we started to do mercury samples on this species. You see in red, this red line. Under the red line is the amounts of mercury is allowed the people to consume the fish. But above that line is a problem. And we found almost all these fish has a very high concentration of mercury. And we showed the government of Colombia that situation. And for the first time, a species of fish and a trade was forbidden in the country with a resolution because the high levels of mercury. It's a public health issue. So where does the mercury come from in the Amazon? Basically, gold mining, both illegal and legal, the natural mercury in the soil. And with the deforestation, all this mercury is exposed to the rain and just go into the water. Also, there is atmospheric transportation of the mercury far away from the areas of mining, and the deforestation and soil erosion. So, as I mentioned before, we selected dolphins because they have a very high food requirements. Their trophic level is very broad, more than 63 different fish species. They have a very active behavior, extensive migration, more than 2,000 kilometers they can move along the rivers. They have a high biomass, and they are prolonged longevity, almost 50, 55 years of life in a species, very similar to us. So we started to do all our assessment of mercury in 2006 in the Amazon and 2008 in the Orinoco, especially with fish that people used to consume in the areas of the rivers. But then we have the opportunity in 2017 to start to capture dolphins in a program to put satellite tagging, and we started to do mercury samples in these animals. And the first 10 animals we collect samples, all them have mercury. So we create this health assessment program, And now we have more than 100 samples in dolphins in different countries, and we have about 400 fish species evaluated. The samples were taken in different countries, but mainly in Colombia and in the border with Peru and with Venezuela. And what we found is very high levels of mercury. You can see in yellow the number of samples, and in gray the rank, the maximum rank, and in green the minimum rank. So we have a very high levels of mercury in dolphins. The fish samples were collected as well in 10 different locations in different areas of the countries, and we collect different species of fish. We found more mercury in carnivorous species and less in detrivorous species. So the results vary a lot, but here the point is that in some areas, dolphins and fish has a lot of mercury, and they were far away from gold mining activity. So how is that possible? So we have atmospheric movements of mercury, but also the fish migrate. Catfish produce long migrations, more than 6,000 kilometers from Brazil to Peru, and they are collecting mercury in their travesty. So there is a transfer of mercury downstream with the current, and there is a mercury coming upstream with the fish. So it's a transboundary problem. So at the end, we found that all dolphins we evaluate, they have some concentrations of mercury. There is not conclusive information about the mercury related with sex and with gender and weight, because we have mercury in juveniles, in calves, in adults, females, and males. We know that males used to move more along the rivers, 400, 500 kilometers, and females remain more in the same areas with calves. There are some high levels of mercury reported in gold mining areas like the Tapajós or in the Orinoco close to the mining arc. We don't have evidence of mortality on dolphins because of the mercury. And it's not very easy to see the symptoms on the dolphins as the same on people. So when we are talking about this with traders, fish traders, they say, we never have seen a ill fish. So they don't want to recognize the problem. And this is very scary because we know the mercury is an invisible threat. You don't eat a fish and then you have a stomachache. The mercury is going inside your body in silence. What are the effects we infer by mercury contamination in mammals? Cerebral palsy, abnormalities, blindness, problems in cardiovascular systems? We don't know. We know that marine dolphins, they have some selenium crystals in the kidneys, and they can reduce the amounts of mercury in their bodies. We are not sure about the dolphins. We know humans, we don't have this capacity to reduce the mercury. We were doing 3 years ago a survey with the Washington Post to try to see and to show the work we are doing with dolphins. And I remember this time they asked me about my levels of mercury. And I said, well, I never did. So they asked me to do that. And I did the test. I was expecting 2 milligrams per kilogram. And my surprise was I had 36.4, more than some of the dolphins I was reporting to have very high levels of mercury. So I started to work with a toxicologist, taking selenium pills, and already I have reduced my amounts of mercury to 7.4. So there are some solutions. There are some possibilities. But trying to do this in an environment like in the Amazon is very difficult. We have a very low governance in the Amazon, in all the countries. But the organized crime, they are very well organized there. There is an estimation of 500,000 people working in these criminal organizations. And the goal is an incredible opportunity for them to launder the money. And it's very difficult to the nuns to talk about this issue in the Amazon. I know we are not going to stop the gold mining, but we need to look for other solutions like the technology transfer. So we have some steps in front of us to address the mercury pollution. One is to continue the study of health impacts of mercury on people, river dolphins, and other aquatic species. We need to support the Minamata Convention through local involvement and action, strengthen environmental education to influence the value change and empower consumers. We need to establish permanent monitoring programs for public health and biodiversity. But here, I want to emphasize something. So far, most of the information comes from NGOs and universities and independent studies. We want to ask you, the governments, to be more involved, to lead this monitoring of mercury in the regions. Don't be afraid to do that. We need the governments to be involved. We need to promote gold traceability to favor low-impact producer. And the other thing is we have a lot of information on mercury, a lot, but it's dispersed. We don't have a single database. We cannot show to the governments a map showing all this data we have. We need more cooperation. In my country, there are several organizations doing an alliance trying to address this problem with mercury. They are going to talk in the next days here. But we need to move to other countries and to try to produce a database. And Minamata Convention will be a very good frame to do that. We need to share information. Scientists, we used to be a little bit selfish and we keep the information for us, but we need to put in a public database. And during the COP-16 in Cali, the COP-16 of biodiversity, there was an initiative to address illegal gold mining in the Amazon. And they recommend 7 specific actions. I'm not going to read all these, but some of them that are very relevant is to combat illicit finance. We need to track the money that are going around the gold. What is the solution for all this mercury pollution in the Amazon? We cannot change the economy of the planet. But again, we can transfer technology and we can involve more people. And we need to give voices to the indigenous people in the region and change this vision that the indigenous and the local people is the object of our studies. And we need to transfer them in subjects that they can lead their own destiny in the region. And finally, here we are talking about One Health. We are talking about environment, biodiversity, and people. We are very naive if we think that only the fish has mercury pollution or the ecosystems, and we are safe. We are not safe. And I want to invite you to take a mercury samples for yourself. $10. $10, and you will change your perspective of this problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trujillo, for your engagement and all the work you do, and also for having joined us this evening. Now, to link what we are discussing tonight to the beginning of this fight in Japan and to the screening of the Minamata film that we hosted in the same venue 2 years ago, it is my pleasure to invite to the podium Ms. Eileen Miyoko-Smith, who is the executive director of Green Action in Japan and co-author of Minamata with the photographer Eugene Smith. Ms. Smith will connect the legacy of Minamata disease to current challenges in the Amazon and introduce the photo exhibit that you have here at the Minamata COP, Photographer's Eye Project. She will speak about it better than me. Ms. Smith, over to you.
Minamata offers lessons for today's challenges. And I come from a family of diplomats, foreign minister, UN ambassador, and international businessmen. But meeting the Minamata methylmercury victims when I was 21 changed my life. The victims have grounded me. And in these few minutes, I would like to convey my message. So this is the movie Minamata, Hollywood movie that was mentioned. The premiere of the movie made me realize that we still have a long way to go to inform the world about the dangers of mercury. This is the book that my first husband, Eugene Smith, and I did, called Minamata, and it was published in 1975, and the movie was based on that. At the premiere of the movie, IPEN and my group Green Action issued a flyer which we distributed, and it highlighted the fossil fuel industry and gold mining. This is a book called Minamata, published by Harvard Monographs, and as you can see, the title is Pollution and the Struggle for the subtitle is Pollution and the Struggle for Democracy in Post-War Japan. This is not just about ppm, it's about the struggle for democracy. I will now show you 15 photographs that Jean and I took. These are all photographs taken in Minamata in the early 1970s. The discovery of Minamata disease was in 1956, and next year marks the 75th anniversary since that discovery. But even today, the issue is very prominent and ongoing. This is the factory Chiso to the right and Minamata Bay to the left. That is the bay that got contaminated, and because of negligence, it spread to the much wider Shiranui Sea. Minamata showed that mercury pollution can endanger the next generation. In other words, the methylmercury went through the placenta into the fetus. This is the president of Chiso, the polluter, meeting victims. This is Nagai Isamu, a congenital Minamata disease victim. He called me yesterday, but I didn't answer the phone because I knew he'd be charged international phone call. This is Hanaga Isamu, also a congenital Minamata disease victim, in a facility called Meisuyen, where he still lives, 53 years after this photograph was taken. This is Mr. Sato. His son attended the last COP convention, COP-5, with his wife. This is Shinobu's mother. I'll introduce you to her in a few minutes. Speaking, holding a megaphone to the president. This is the victory that the victims won, where Chiso was found legally liable for Minamata disease. And this is the verdict, which I feel is one of the biggest lessons of Minamata. This is Shinobu. Attending the first UN environmental conference held in Stockholm in 1972. This is Shinobu today, speaking about all the people who are still filing lawsuits to try to get relief. There are currently 9 lawsuits, including with Minamata and Niigata. And this is a recent lawsuit last year, where the court recognized the people polluted in an area that the government still doesn't recognize. This is Mr. Sato to the right and his son and his wife, who are now heading a lawsuit of people who were toddlers during the peak of the pollution. And youth going to Minamata and learning about Minamata is very important. These are, if you want to see the photographs more, the website will be up, renewed in 2 days. And there are many lessons to be learned about Minamata. I'll be doing a knowledge lab on the 5th, and I can speak more about these lessons. But there are many lessons to be learned from Minamata, especially creating a certification system. We need a different way of helping victims. And we need a different standard where we can recognize that very low levels of mercury can cause damage, and to recognize that. As I mentioned, Minamata is a very ongoing issue. Last month, exactly a month ago, the EPA, the Environment Ministry, announced a new study, but there's never been a comprehensive study in Minamata. And the Japanese Environmental Council a week ago stated that there should be a different way of studying the situation, including currently an epidemiological study that is required and very important to hold. Now, the last 1 or 2 minutes, I would like to introduce you to the Minamata Photographers' Eye Project. The exhibit is right outside, between here and the security. There are 9 photographers, and this is the Instagram of the project. I'm going to show this Instagram at the end again. So our mission is to preserve and share these images and educate and raise awareness and prevent future environmental disasters. And here are the 9 photographs, and I end my talk with that. These are all photographs of slips displayed in the lobby. This is Hanaga, who was in that hospital for 53 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. Just to mention that Ms. Smith has a stand outside. There is also the exhibition. So don't hesitate to go and visit the stand and the photos that are exhibited outside. And I also wanted to mention that Mr. Trujillo will be with us 2 more days. So if you have questions for those who will be here at the conference center, you will have occasions to also exchange with him. Next in our program is the screening of Amazon, the new Minamata film. The documentary reveals how mercury contamination threatens the inhabitants of Amazonia with the shadow of the Minamata disease, as it follows the saga of the Munduruku people to contain the destructive impact of gold mining in their ancestral territory. And before I give the floor to the film director, and to an indigenous leader from this exact tribe, I would like to invite Mr. André Simas Magalhães, Minister Consular at the Permanent Mission of Brazil to the United Nations here in Geneva, to join me on the podium for short remarks to contextualize the movie and what we have heard tonight. Mr. Magalhães, please join me on podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for the Permanent Mission of Brazil to take part in this screening of Amazon, the new Minamata. I thank the Secretariat of the Minamata Convention and the Geneva Environment Network for organizing this important event. The film amplifies the voices of those who stand at the forefront of the fight against mercury contamination caused by gold mining. It sheds light on how we, as a global community, address the intersection of environmental protection, human rights, and social justice. There are still many challenges ahead, but Brazil has been making strong efforts to implement actions to address the challenges posed by mercury. Brazil developed the National Action Plan on Mercury use in artisanal and small-scale gold mining, supported by the Global Environmental Facility and the United Nations Environmental Programme through the project Gold Without Mercury. This plan seeks to replace mercury with cleaner technologies, strengthen inspection, train miners, and ensure a just transition for traditional communities. Brazil has also implemented measures to combat illegal mining and reduce mercury contamination in indigenous lands. Operation Munduruku has removed thousands of illegal miners, recovered large forest areas, and now focus on dismantling camps and cutting supplied routes to stop mercury pollution at its source. In the Yanomami land, coordinated actions have reduced illegal mining by 98%, while complementary health and food programs have expanded social protection and reduced malnutrition-related death by 68% between 2023 and 2025. These initiatives reflect Brazil's commitment to the Minamata Convention, to human dignity, and to indigenous participation. At COP-6, Brazil called for stronger participation of indigenous peoples and local communities in the Convention's governance and implementation. At COP-6 now, Brazil proposed to update the guidance that the Minamata Convention provides to the GAF regarding the financing and implementation activities. It will request that the fund prioritize the initiatives for monitoring environmental and human health exposure to mercury, with the participation of indigenous peoples and local communities in their implementation. As we watch this film tonight, let us reflect on the communities who live with mercury pollution and on our shared responsibility to ensure that no new Minamata ever happens again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Magalhães. I would now like to invite the film director, Mr. Jorge Bodansky, to join me at the podium to introduce the film. I would also like to thank him and his team for having made the film available for this important occasion. Please join me.
I am a Brazilian filmmaker and documentarian. I've been working in the Amazon region for over 50 years. In 2016, While making a documentary about the Trans-Amazonian Highway, I passed through the Munduruku Indigenous Reserve, where a meeting of chiefs was being held to discuss the issue of a dam planned for the Tapajós River. There I met a doctor, Dr. Eric Jennings, and I asked him what the doctor was doing there. He told me he had come because there was an unusually high demand for wheelchairs for children, and he wanted to investigate what was happening. He suspected it might already be a consequence of mercury contamination, which was later confirmed. He told me that the symptoms he was observing there were the same as those seen in Minamata Bay in Japan in the 50s. That caught me attention. I thought, wow, interesting. We can see through what happened in Minamata a glimpse of the Amazon future. And that inspired me to make this documentary. We faced many challenges in making this film. It took us 9 years. First, there was a challenge to get the funding. Then we were caught off guard by the pandemic and also the previous government, which encouraged and protected the miners, made it very difficult for us to complete our film. It took 9 years to make the film. Initially, we were hit by COVID, which prevents us from filming in Japan, and in the moment we need to do so. Fortunately, we managed to find a team in Japan who helped us greatly, and we received invaluable support from the Minamata Museum, which was extremely helpful and deeply sympathetic to the people of the Amazon we are going. And then we had to face the previous government, which protected illegal mining, that made things very difficult for us because of a little number of indigenous people had been coopted by the miners and tried to stop our filming. This film was finally made possible thanks to the collaboration of Fiocruz, present here by Dr. Paulo Basta and Dra. Cláudia Vasconcelos. It was through their work that we were able to accompany their team, which allowed us to access the indigenous reserve area and ultimately made this film possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bodansky. Our last speaker this evening is Jairo So Munduruku, an indigenous leader of the Munduruku people, chief of the Saureaboy village in the city of Itaituba. I would like to invite him now to join me on the podium. And Jairo will be speaking in Portuguese. There is interpretation available, so you have headsets on your desks. Don't hesitate to use them. He will be, the interpreters are in the room there and will kindly interpret what he will be saying. So Jairo, I would kindly invite you to join me now on the podium. Thank you very much.
Eu, em primeiro lugar, quero cumprimentar esta sede que é tão importante, desejando meus cumprimentos, não só a esta mesa, mas sim todos que se encontram aqui presentes. Muito obrigado por estar aqui e juntamente com vocês. Eu poderia estar falando muitas coisas a respeito do nosso modo de viver, que nós, povos indígenas, que nós vivemos dentro da Amazônia brasileira, poderíamos dizer que nós sentimos um impacto muito grande, diretamente, e é muito forte a nossa maior preocupação com as nossas vidas. São poucas palavras, mas sim acredito que vocês vão entender. E eu diria que nós precisamos de um equilíbrio justo. Podemos olhar para o nosso planeta, que ela precisa de equilíbrio. Ela não pode estar desequilibrada. Nós podemos olhar mais para baixo, para o nível mais baixo, nossos líderes importantes, governando o nosso mundo, nosso país, deve haver equilíbrio. Equilíbrio político, equilíbrio econômico e equilíbrio social. Nós aqui queremos também participar de uma coisa muito importante. Nós queremos participar também de desenvolvimento. Mas nós queremos ser ouvidos. Não os nossos líderes decidindo por nós, mas sim precisam ouvir as populações tradicionais que estão ali no seu território, no seu ambiente. E por isso, a natureza precisa estar equilibrada. Eu poderia dizer que nós, indígenas, que temos contato direto com a contaminação do mercúrio, é triste de ver a cena de nossas crianças tão felizes no rio contaminada, poluída. Eu não precisava estar alegre. Eu quero que vocês também se sensibilizem. Sejam humanos também. Tenham um amor também pelas vidas. Nós lutamos não só em prol de nossas vidas, nós lutamos em prol da humanidade. A Amazônia é de todos. A Amazônia é do mundo. A Amazônia precisa ser protegida. E os povos que também estão ali morando precisam estar protegidos. Minhas crianças tomando um banho no rio poluído, suja, e ainda se alimentando dos peixes contaminados. É triste. Mas eu queria dizer que nós estamos preocupados. Será que os líderes mundiais estão preocupados com a natureza, com o meio ambiente, com a vida das pessoas que estão ali? Eu acho que não. Será que só as populações indígenas estão gritando, mas ninguém ouve? E as vidas que também estão ali precisam ser ouvidas. Os pássaros precisam ser ouvidos. O vento precisa ser ouvido. A árvore precisa ser ouvida. O rio precisa ser ouvido. E as populações tradicionais, que sejam ribeirinhos ou não, precisam ser ouvidos. Eu quero aqui cantar uma música tradicional que diz muito respeito a mim, que um dia as pessoas que eram humanas decidiram ir embora por causa da destruição do meio ambiente, da destruição do seu espaço, o seu modo de viver. Viram a morte chegar e resolveram ir deixar este mundo para viver no fundo dos rios. Para vocês talvez não significam, mas para mim significa muito. Eles resolveram ir morar no reino das águas, no mundo das águas, procurar uma vida melhor. Mas, infelizmente, eles também estão doentes, contaminados. Se vocês me permitirem, gostaria de poder aqui apresentar essa música na minha língua tradicional, mas talvez eu possa explicar um pouco o que diz a música. Ijo cepuru adi ainja kuakum, ijo cepuru adi ainja kuakum, yadapa churaidip, yadapa churaidip, ainja kuakum, apebid ip uminka yo pararak, parará, comanca, a pebit e umanca, yo parará, comanca, e yo che puro adi, ainda com a com, e yo che puro adi, ainda com a com, yadapa, choraidip, yadapa, choraidip, ainda com a com, a pebit e pumanca, yo parará, comanca, a pebit e pumanca, yo parará, comanca. Uau! A música diz que as mulheres que geram vidas, vocês acabaram de ver as pessoas de que o seu ventre está contaminado. Eles já preveram de que um dia seriam contaminados. Então a música diz: foi aqui que a minha mãe foi morar no fundo do rio. Os seus longos cabelos, tão lindos, ao balançar na corredeira do rio, está a balançar. Ela contém uma pintura, as pinturas tradicionais, que identificam a sua identidade. Que espécie de peixe é? E está dizendo, como é que está agora as suas pinturas? Os seus cabelos, a sua beleza. E simplesmente essa mensagem, da canção desta música. Que elas também estão contaminadas. Os seus longos cabelos tão lindos, de repente, está cheio de mercúrio. O seu corpo, as suas pinturas desapareceram porque estão doentes. Então, esta foi a mensagem. Eu poderia estar falando muita coisa para vocês a respeito do meio ambiente, da natureza. Ela precisa estar equilibrada. Quem vai equilibrar? Será que só as populações indígenas? Nós não queremos que as decisões sejam tomadas pelos líderes políticos. Nós queremos que também sejam tomadas pelas decisões dos povos indígenas que ali estão vivendo antes da chegada deles no nosso território. O filme vai dizer muita coisa. Eu não seria capaz de ver, porque é triste ver doenças que não têm cura está matando o povo indígena e também os peixes que estão ali e também a natureza sendo destruída, o rio poluído. Quero agradecer neste momento, parabenizar todos vocês que estão aqui presentes e nós juntos vamos assistir o filme. E quero agradecer, meu muito obrigado, até o Arampimá. Obrigado.
Obrigada, Chef Jairo. It's now time to start the screening, but before we start, I think we can give one more round of applause to all our speakers this evening. I will now let my colleagues launch the screening, and I hope, we all hope that you will enjoy the film and that you have enjoyed this moment with us. Thank you.